Keir Starmer tweeted on Wednesday that here, I'll read it to you in full. There's a photograph of him with Ursula von der Leyen. And he wrote, I want to reset. It's quite a soft focus photograph. It looks like there might have been a little bit of Vaseline on the lens, to make it look very romantic. I want to reset our relationship, he wrote, with the EU and make Brexit work for the British people. Looking forward to visiting Brussels next week to start discussions with von der Leyen. And I haven't got it in front of me, but she replied in a similarly upbeat vein. She, of course, is the president of the EU Commission, who is shaking hands like it's going out of fashion this week. In fact, here is her response to Keir Starmer. Dear Keir Starmer, she wrote, good to see you in the margins of the UN General Assembly. I don't think that's a dig. I don't think she's suggesting we have been marginalised. I think that she just means it was a meeting outside of the scheduled formal array. At least I bloody hope so. Otherwise, she's having a swing at our lad. Looking forward to welcoming you at the EU Commission in Brussels next week to discuss the reset of EU-UK relations. So how lovely. But as Oliver Cam points out, this doesn't make any sense from the British perspective. He wrote yesterday, or late on Wednesday, Brexit cannot, quote, work for the British people, and it's dishonest or dogmatic to suppose otherwise. The most that can be achieved is to mitigate the damage. Something that has been true since Theresa May was Prime Minister. But Theresa May was the only Prime Minister, and I don't know about Rishi Sunak. I don't know whether by the time he got into Downing Street he had realised this, or whether he was still chugging the Kool-Aid, or whether there was something in it for people like him that is obviously not going to be of benefit to people like you and me. But this has been true since Theresa May got into Downing Street. The only thing you can achieve is to mitigate the damage. She understood that. Her tragedy, her curse, in many ways, was that she could never say it out loud. She could never say out loud, my job is to make the damage as low as possible. My job is to reduce the damage as much as I possibly can. She had to, by dint of the party she was leading and the country she was in, she had to pretend that it was all a brilliant idea. She'd been wrong to resist it, and here she was to deliver all the genius unicorns that were about to be delivered. So this is a great point from the journalist, author and linguist Oliver Cam, who writes, I don't understand why Labour won't say this when most people, especially the young, increasingly recognise it. In some ways, the same is true of economic growth. Keir Starmer keeps talking about economic growth, and yet the cessation of completely free trade with our closest geographical partners, and indeed the largest single market in the world, is a huge obstacle to growth. Growth is looking good. Compared to where we were at the beginning of the year, the OECD's revisions put the UK in... Growth is a tricky measure, because if you're absolutely rubbish on Monday and things start looking up on Tuesday, your growth is going to be higher than people who are doing great on Monday and continue to do great on Tuesday. Do you see what I mean? The starting point is relevant to growth. But an improvement in the OECD forecast can only ever be good news. Of course, people ignore OECD forecasts sometimes when they don't like what they say, and then shout them from the rooftops when they do. The point that everybody can agree on is that growth would be better if we were still in the biggest single market in the world. There is no real argument against that. So there's two things going on here. The first is on growth, and the second is on making Brexit work for the British people without admitting that the job is simply to mitigate the damage. And Oliver Cam writes, I don't understand why Labour won't say this when most people, especially the young, increasingly recognise it. What is your answer to that question? And I don't want to be strict. I don't want to be bossy, rather. I may well reserve the right to be strict, but I don't want to be bossy. I don't want you to ring me to agree with Oliver Cam and myself that this is stupid, that the most that can be achieved is to mitigate the damage. That's just a given, right? the single biggest thing you can do when you punch a hole in the side of your own ship or you punch a hole in the side of your own boat, the single best thing you can do is try to plug as much of the hole as you can to minimize the amount of water coming on board. It's not the best analogy I've ever shared with you, but that's the point. It's about damage mitigation, damage limitation. We have a Prime Minister now who has been absolutely crystal clear about his understanding of this very simple fact. Brexit was a stupid thing to do, and the job of any government now is to limit the damage up to and including the point where you can begin to talk about reversing it, which I don't think you can do yet, although good luck to everybody on the National Rejoin March in London tomorrow. Just Google that phrase if you want to find out about getting involved or joining in. But I don't understand it either, and I'm James O'Brexit. Why won't Labour say... So what I'm being bossy on or strict on is that I want you to answer this question, not to tell me your thoughts on Brexit or Keir Starmer or Oliver Cam. Why won't Labour say that the best you can hope for with Brexit is to mitigate the damage it is doing when everybody, honest, especially young people, know that to be true. Okay? Why? Why now can't he say, my job is to limit the damage being done? Nobody's claiming it's gone well. Nobody's claiming it was a good thing. I think, is Farage supposed to have left the country? He said he'd leave the country if it failed, and he described it as having failed. So I don't think there is a constituency of people out there who are worried about betrayal or anything like that. And so here's the bit I don't get. You can categorically rule out reversal or rejoining, right? He can categorically say, look, we're never going to rejoin. My job now is to make the best of a bad lot. And I don't understand why he doesn't do that. And I want you to tell me. And this is a wide open goal, actually. 0345 6060 973. I'll take anything you've got. Why won't he say? I understand the reasoning behind saying we're never going to rejoin, or he said we're never going to rejoin in my lifetime. So you can say on the one hand, we are never going to rejoin. The decision has been made. The decision has been taken. That's in your left hand. In your right hand, my job now is to make the best of it, with the admission that the best of it involves mitigating the damage. Why? Why won't the Labour leader, why won't the Prime Minister of this country tell the truth about the single, if you like, biggest issue holding back the growth that he consistently talks about and indeed hindering the likelihood of a meaningful reset with the European Union? Why won't Keir Starmer in power admit what he was adamant about in opposition, or at least was adamant about before becoming leader of the Labour Party, which is that Brexit is something very, very silly, and the best you can hope for as a British politician is to minimise the damage that it does. All right? The number you need is 0345 6060 973. Come at it in whatever way you want. What is he worried about? Who is he worried about? And who does this please? Who does this work with? The rest of us sit here and go, this just doesn't make any sense. Everybody knows that your job is to limit the damage being done. So why won't you just come out and say that? Otherwise, you suffer from all the other problems that previous prime ministers have suffered from, which is the delivery of unreasonable expectations. Keir Starmer giving the impression that he can deliver something big and shiny. He can't. All he can do is nibble away at the edges of the damage in the hope of reducing it. So why won't he come out and say that? Listen, I could be wrong. Maybe you think there is something big and shiny that he could deliver tomorrow. I'd be surprised, A, if I was wrong, and B, if you could describe what that big shiny thing is. But why would he? Because that's what he's doing. He's still creating the mythology of expectation. Still creating the idea that there's some big present he can deliver, like an enormous teddy bear at the fun fair. He's lobbing his darts at the playing cards stuck on the board and thinking he's going to win an enormous teddy bear, or making his kids think he's going to win an enormous teddy bear when everybody knows he's not. He can't. So what is the reasoning behind Keir Starmer's refusal to state the bleeding obvious about the European Union relations, about Brexit? Hit the numbers now, you will get through. It goes in both directions at the moment. There used to be a moment where I could barely say the word Brexit without the switchboard exploding. In subsequent years, as it kind of went as it went off the boil a bit while people crossed their fingers and hoped that Boris Johnson's farrago of lies and nonsenses wouldn't turn out to be quite as heinous as it turned out to be. Then there was no appetite for talking about it. And then the appetite came back. And the only people now who don't want to talk about Brexit are generally the people who told us it was all going to be a brilliant idea because, that people don't like having their faces rubbed in the evidence of their own stupidity. But if you are patriotic, if the future of the country is something that matters to you, this is one of the very big issues that needs to be addressed by government, by prime ministers, and he won't address it. Talking about reset, talking about discussions, a reset of our relationship with the EU. Make Brexit work for the British people. Why won't he tell the truth? The story is in the news. Keir Starmer is going to the meeting of the European Commission next week in order to, in his own words, reset the relationship. So I appreciate that a lot of people who voted for it and are now deeply embarrassed by their own gullibility are desperate for the conversation never to be had. But this is a conversation about what our Prime Minister is doing and saying. An awful lot of the news, particularly the kind of news we cover, is going to be about the things that the Prime Minister is doing and saying. And he is saying that he's looking forward to his trip to Brussels in order to reset the relationship between the UK and the EU. I don't even know what that means. That could be another question if you want to answer it. But I'm drawn to the question of why he claims that he can make it work for the British people when everybody who understands anything knows that's nonsense. So why won't Keir Starmer say that his job is to limit the damage when everybody paying attention knows that that is the case? And I like phone-ins about Brexit where I don't know the answer. I mean, we never used to have them. We've had two now in the last 3 weeks. I don't know the answer to this question. Why is he now? He's in power. He's over the line. The Ming vase has been safely delivered to the other side of the ice rink so we can start telling the truth about one of the biggest issues of our age. But he won't. He's just telling different flavoured lies from all the Tories that went before him.